I got on one knee. She laughed and said, "I'm in love with your best friend." So I cut them both off. A year later, they hated each other. And my new girlfriend just said yes to my proposal. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. The ring felt like a lead weight in my pocket. A secret so profound it seemed to warp the very air around me. I kept touching my jacket just to make sure the small velvet box was still there. A nervous tick I hoped Chloe would mistake for casual coolness. "You okay, man?" Mark clapped me on the shoulder, his grin wide and easy. "You look like you're about to pass out." "Just a big night," I said, forcing a smile. "My best friend." He wasn't on it, of course. He'd helped me plan the whole thing. "You got the signal straight. When I adjust my glasses, you start the music. Relax, Alex, it's in the bag. She's going to lose her mind." He gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze before melting back into the small crowd of our closest friends gathered on the rooftop terrace. And what a rooftop it was. Fairy lights twinkled against the deep indigo of the evening sky, strung between potted olive trees. The city glittered below us, a silent, sprawling witness. The air smelled of jasmine and grilling meat. It was perfect. I planned it to be perfect. I was a planner. It's who I am. I build things. A career, a future, a life I desperately wanted to share with her. I found Chloe by the railing. Her back to me, looking out at the view. Her auburn hair cascaded down her back, catching the soft light. My heart did its familiar, painful squeeze. God, I loved her. "Hey, you," I said, slipping an arm around her waist. She turned, offering me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She'd been distant lately, stressed about work, she said. I chalked it up to pre-anniversary jitters. Our 4-year was next week. I thought I was being romantic, beating the date. "Having fun?" I asked. "It's a nice party," she said, her gaze drifting over my shoulder. "Lisa's drink is ridiculously strong, and Mark is being a lot." "He's just happy we're all together," I said, a thread of defensiveness in my voice I immediately regretted. "I wanted tonight to be flawless." She just shrugged, pulling out her phone. "Yeah, sure." That was the other thing. The phone. It was always in her hand now, a shield against me. I'd catch her typing with a small, secret smile, her thumbs flying. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd lock the screen and say, "Just Lisa. Girl stuff." The hollow feeling in my chest, the one I've been ignoring for weeks, gave a violent thrum. "Not now," I told it. "This is the night everything gets better." Dinner was a blur of laughter and clinking glasses that felt miles away. I barely tasted the food. I watched her, my Chloe, as she laughed at one of Mark's jokes, her head thrown back. She seemed more animated with him than she had with me all night. I shook the thought away. Paranoia. This was Mark, my brother from another mother. He was the charismatic one, the life of the party. I was the steady one, the planner. We balanced each other out. Finally, the moment arrived. Dessert was cleared. The soft ambient music playing through the speakers faded. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage of bone. This was it. I stood up, my chair scraping softly on the terrace tiles. The conversation around the table died down. All eyes turned to me. I saw phones being subtly raised, recording lights blinking on. Good. I wanted this remembered. I adjusted my glasses, on cue. The first few gentle chords of our song, a sappy Ed Sheeran number she adored, began to play from the speaker Mark had set up. A wave of softness swept the table. Chloe looked up from her phone, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Alex, what's going on?" I couldn't speak. My throat had sealed shut. All my carefully rehearsed words vanished from my mind. So I just did it. I walked around to her side of the table, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. The world narrowed to her face. The love I felt was a physical force, a tidal wave about to break. I got down on one knee. The gasp from our friends was collective, a sharp intake of breath that seemed to suck all the sound from the night. I fumbled in my pocket, my fingers finally closing around the velvet box. I saw her eyes widen, saw her look from my face to the box and back again. "Alex," she whispered, but it wasn't the breathless, joyous whisper I dreamed of. I opened the box. The diamond caught the fairy lights and exploded in a shower of brilliant sparks. It was perfect, just like her. My voice, when it finally came, was rough with emotion. "Chloe, from the moment I met you, my life had a new purpose. It was to make you happy, to build a world with you that was safe and fun and full of love." I could see tears in the eyes of her friends. I pushed on, my confidence growing. "You are my best friend, my favorite person, my entire world. Will you? Will you make me the happiest man alive? Will you marry me?" The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by the soft strains of the music. It stretched for a second too long. Then two. A sound came out of her mouth. It wasn't a sob. It wasn't a gasp. It was a laugh. A short, sharp, forced, nervous laugh. The blood in my veins turned to ice. "Are you?" She giggled again, a horrible, brittle sound.
Are you serious, Alex? Get up. You're embarrassing yourself.
The ice spread, freezing me to the spot. I was still on one knee, the ring held out like a supplicant. My brain refused to process the words. This was a joke. It had to be. "What?" I managed, a stupid, hopeful smile still clinging to my lips. "No, I'm serious. Chloe, will you marry me?" Her face hardened. The laughter died, replaced by a mask of cold pity and something else. Impatience. "Did you really think I'd say yes?" The words were clear, crisp, and designed to cut. They landed like shrapnel. "We've been growing apart for months. I can't do this. I'm not. I'm in love with someone else." The world tilted on its axis. The rooftop, the friends, the city lights. It all swam in a nauseating blur. "What? Who?" She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. She looked past me toward the back of the group. "Mark," she called out, her voice softening. "It's okay. Come here." Time seemed to slow down, each frame a fresh horror. Mark, my best friend, the guy who'd helped me pick out this very ring, stepped out from behind Lisa. He wouldn't meet my eyes. His face was a mixture of guilt and a smug, possessive triumph that made my stomach lurch. He walked over and stood beside Chloe, his hand finding the small of her back, a gesture I'd done 1,000 times. My gesture, on my girl. "You?" The word was a choked whisper. I looked from his traitorous face to her defiant one. "Mark, he makes me feel alive," Chloe said, as if explaining something simple to a child. Her eyes were bright now, not with tears of joy, but with the drama of it all. She was the star of her own shocking movie. "You just plan things. You're a blueprint. He's the adventure. You just plan things." The words were the final, precise twist of a knife. She had taken the core of who I was, my steadiness, my reliability, my desire to build a future for us, and weaponized it. She had used it as her justification for this public execution of our relationship. The numbness began then. A blessed anesthetic void that spread from my core, silencing the screaming pain, dousing the white-hot fury. I looked at the ring, still winking innocently in its box. I looked at the horrified, tear-streaked faces of my friends, their phones still recording, now documenting my utter annihilation. I didn't say a word. With a calm I didn't know I possessed, I closed the velvet box. The click was deafening in the silence. I stood up, my knees protesting, my body feeling 100 years old. I slipped the box back into my pocket. I looked at Chloe, then at Mark. I held their gaze for a single, endless second, letting them see the man they had just killed. Not with anger, not with tears, but with a profound, bottomless silence. Then I turned, and I walked away. I walked past the table of stunned friends, past the waitstaff who looked awkwardly at their shoes, through the door leading off the rooftop and into the sterile hallway of the building. I heard a single sharp sob, probably Lisa's, and then the door swung shut, cutting off the world I had just left behind. The elevator ride down was silent. My reflection in the polished brass doors was a stranger's face, pale, composed, empty. The lead weight in my pocket was no longer a secret hope. It was a tombstone, and I was the ghost walking away from my own grave. The drive home was a study in sensory deprivation. The city lights blurred into meaningless streaks of color. The hum of the engine was a distant mechanical whine. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing even. Inside, I was a cathedral that had been struck by lightning. The structure was still standing, but the interior was scorched, hollow, and silent. I walked into our apartment. It still smelled like her vanilla and bergamot from the expensive candles she loved. Her jacket was slung over the back of the couch. A half-finished mug of tea sat on the coffee table. It was a museum of a life that had an hour ago felt utterly real. I didn't break down. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. The shock was too absolute. The betrayal too clean in its cruelty. It was a surgical amputation. The limb was gone, but the phantom pain hadn't set in yet. I stood in the center of the living room, just breathing. Then a single clear thought cut through the static. This is no longer my life. I went to my home office, sat at the desk, and pulled out a fresh notepad. The planner in me, the part of me she had so derisively mocked, was the only part that still functioned. It was my life raft. I wrote 4 words at the top of the page. 1 block, 2 box, 3 locks, 4 space. The numbness began to recede, replaced by a cold, methodical energy. I started with my phone. My fingers moved with an alien certainty. Block Chloe. A few taps. Her name disappeared from my favorites. Block Mark. It was even easier. I felt nothing but a distant, clinical satisfaction, like a gardener pulling a poisonous weed. Next, I found a stack of empty moving boxes in the storage closet. I started in the bedroom. I didn't linger. I didn't smell her clothes or hold them to my face. I was an archivist, cataloging the artifacts of a dead civilization. Dresses, shoes, jewelry. The absurdly large collection of skincare products that littered the bathroom counter. All of it went into the boxes. I was ruthless. If it was hers, it went in. A framed photo of us on the beach. In the box. The silly, ugly mug she'd bought me as a joke that I'd secretly loved. It was hers. A part of her world. In the box. It took 3 hours. By the end, the apartment was stripped of her. The surfaces were bare. The closet was half empty. The vanilla scent was fading, overpowered by dust and cardboard. I taped the last box shut. It was 2:17 a.m. I took a picture of the 6 sealed boxes stacked by the front door. I found the number of Rachel, the most neutral of our mutual friends, and sent the picture with a text. Alex, her things are by my door. She can arrange to have them picked up tomorrow. Do not give her my new address. I didn't wait for a reply. I went online, found a 24-hour locksmith, and paid a small fortune for an emergency call to change the locks. While I waited for him, I packed a duffel bag with my own essentials. When the new keys were in my hand, I felt the first semblance of control since I'd knelt on that rooftop. Finally, I opened my group chat with my 3 closest friends, the ones who had been there, who had seen it. I typed out a message, my thumb hovering over the send button for a full minute. Alex, Chloe, and Mark are dead to me. What they did was a kill shot. If you are in my life, you will respect that. Do not update me on them. Do not try to mediate. I am taking space. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. I sent it. I turned my phone off. Not silent. Off. The silence in the apartment was now my own. It was no longer an absence, but a presence. I sat in it. I let the unfairness of it all wash over me. The 4 years, the plans, the ring in my pocket that felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. I had been loyal. I had been committed. I had built a foundation, and she had called it a cage. The phantom pain was starting, a deep, aching throb in a part of my soul that was now missing. But I didn't fight it. I just sat in the quiet of my new, hollowed-out world and let it hurt. I wasn't building a future for us anymore. I was shoring up the defenses for me. And the first, most important rule was simple. They were gone. And they were never, ever coming back. Weeks bled into a month. The raw, screaming pain had subsided into a constant low-grade hum of anger. I'd moved into a new apartment, a sleek, modern box in a building where no one knew me. It held no ghosts. I worked from home. I went to the gym until my muscles screamed and my mind went blessedly blank. And I learned to cook for one. I was on the treadmill, drenched in sweat, pushing through the last punishing kilometer when my phone buzzed on the console. I glanced down, expecting a spam message. It was from an unknown number. Unknown. Alex, we need to talk. My heart didn't flutter. It didn't leap. It just gave a single hard, angry thud against my ribs. I knew. I just knew. I kept running, my pace steady. The message sat there, a digital ghost at the feast. A minute later, another buzz. Unknown. What you did, just walking out, was so cruel. You humiliated me. A cold laugh escaped me, lost in the grunt of my effort. I humiliated her. The audacity was still breathtaking. I finished my run, slowing to a walk, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I picked up my phone, my thumb hovering over the block button, but a colder, more curious part of me wanted to see the script. I knew how this worked. I'd seen it in movies she'd made me watch. Alex, this number is being blocked. I put the phone down and started my cool-down stretches. It buzzed again almost instantly. 3 rapid-fire texts. Unknown. Wait, please. Unknown. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. Unknown. You pushed me into his arms. You were so focused on the future, you forgot about us in the present. Mark was just there for me. It just happened. There it was. The justification. The classic rewrite of history. Our shared dreams were now my singular obsession. My stability was now emotional neglect. Mark's betrayal was now him simply being there. And the months-long affair, the calculated public humiliation, was now something that just happened. like a car accident, like bad weather. I looked at the words, waiting for the sting. There was none. All I felt was a profound, bone-deep weariness. This was the person I'd wanted to spend my life with. This was the depth of her character. It was pathetic. I finished my stretches, grabbed my towel and my water bottle. I looked at the phone one last time. No more messages came. She had fired her shot, the one she probably thought would make me see the error of my ways, and it had landed in a void. I picked up the phone. I didn't type a response. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a reaction, not even an angry one. I simply tapped a few times, selected the number, and hit block. The screen went back to my home screen. I wiped my face with a towel, took a long swig of water, and walked out of the gym into the clean, anonymous morning. The hook had been baited and cast, but the fish had already swum away. The water was calm. 2 months to the day after the rooftop, I was finally feeling human again. The new apartment felt like mine. I'd hung a few pictures, bought a ridiculously comfortable armchair, and mastered a decent chicken curry. The silence was no longer hollow. It was peaceful. I was working on a complex project, my headphones on, when my personal phone lit up. The screen showed Lisa, Chloe's chief bridesmaid, the unofficial president of her fan club, a flying monkey, if ever there was one. My first instinct was to ignore it. But the planner in me, the part that liked to know what was coming, reasoned that letting this play out was smarter than letting it fester. I took a steadying breath and accepted the call, putting it on speaker.
Alex, oh my God, you actually answered.
Her voice was a dramatic, breathy rush. Lisa, I said, my tone flat. I'm working. You have 30 seconds. Okay. Look, I know you said not to contact you, but this is an emergency. A friend emergency. I said nothing. The silence stretched, forcing her to fill it. It's Chloe. She's a mess, Alex. A complete wreck. I picked up a pen and started doodling a cube on a notepad. Still, I said nothing.
He's nothing like she thought he was.
Lisa plowed on, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper.
He's so jealous. He checks her phone. He gets mad if she talks to other guys, even at work. And he lost his job. Did you hear? He's just leeching off her. It's awful.
I finished the cube and started shading one side. The karma was unfolding exactly as one might have predicted. There was no surprise, only a dull confirmation.
She misses you so much,
Lisa pleaded, her voice cracking with performative emotion.
She cries every night. She knows she made a colossal mistake, the biggest mistake of her life. You have to talk to her. You have to forgive her. You guys were meant to be.
I put the pen down. My 30 seconds were up. Lisa, I said, my voice calm and utterly devoid of warmth. I was very clear with my friends. You are no longer one of them. Do not contact me again. I heard her sharp intake of breath, a prelude to another plea. But Alex, I ended the call. Then I blocked her number. The entire interaction had taken less than a minute. I leaned back in my chair, looking at the shaded cube on my notepad. The message was clear. The affair partner was a dud. The fantasy was crumbling. The desperation was setting in. It was no longer about love or guilt. It was about a sinking ship, and she was looking for the life raft she'd so carelessly tossed overboard. I felt nothing. Not vindication, not pity. It was just data. And it was data I had no use for. A year. It had been. I was meeting a colleague, David, for a quick coffee to discuss a project. I'd chosen a place I never went to, a modern minimalist cafe with uncomfortable chairs and excellent espresso.
I was 5 minutes early, scrolling through news on my phone, when a shadow fell over my table.
I looked up. It was Chloe.
She looked diminished. The vibrant, dramatic energy that used to crackle around her was gone. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore no makeup. She looked tired and older than she should.
You look good, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't reply. I simply placed my phone face down on the table and watched her. I was a scientist observing a specimen. There was no anger, no nervousness, just a detached curiosity about how this would play out. The silence unnerved her. She wrung her hands, a gesture I remembered well.
Alex, I'm so sorry.
It was the biggest mistake of my life. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The bitterness was clean, bracing.
Mark and I broke up, she continued, the words tumbling out in a rush. Months ago. He was using me the whole time. The second I was available, he lost interest. He cheated on me. Can you believe that? He cheated on me 2 months in. I was just too proud to admit it. I had nowhere to go.
She looked at me, expecting a reaction, a gasp, and "I told you so" something. I gave her nothing. I just waited. Her composure began to crack.
Say something, she hissed, her eyes glistening with frustrated tears. Aren't you going to say it? I told you so. Aren't you going to gloat? You have every right to.
I set my cup down with a soft, precise click. Why would I asked, my voice even, quiet.
I haven't thought about you in months.
The words landed with the force of a physical blow. She recoiled, her face crumbling. Then, just as quickly, it twisted into anger. The real Chloe, the one beneath the tears and the drama, finally surfaced.
You're a liar, she spat, her voice low and venomous. You loved me. You wanted to marry me. You can't just turn that off.
I didn't turn it off, Chloe, I said, my tone still infuriatingly calm.
You burned it to the ground. I simply decided not to stand in the smoke. The man who loved you died on that rooftop. You killed him for a guy who saw you as a conquest.
I saw David walk in, spot me, and hang back by the door. Understanding the situation, I gave him a slight nod. I've built a new life, I continued, standing up and picking up my jacket.
And you have no place in it. Not as a friend, not as an acquaintance. Not even as a memory I bother to revisit.
She stared up at me, her face a mask of pure, undiluted fury. The tears were gone.
You're a cold, heartless bastard. I'm glad I didn't marry you.
I looked at her, this stranger who had once been my entire world, and I felt the last invisible thread between us snap.
I know, I said, pulling on my jacket. And I'm glad you didn't either. Goodbye, Chloe.
I walked away from the table toward David. I didn't look back. I heard the scrape of her chair, a muffled sob that turned into a curse, and then the sound of the cafe doors slamming shut. The sound was not an ending. It was an echo. The echo of something that had already been over for a very, very long time. 6 months later, I was on a different mountain, under a different sky. This one was wilder. All granite and pine and thin, clean air. Sarah walked beside me, her hand in mine. We'd met 3 months after the coffee shop incident, introduced by a mutual friend at a rock climbing gym. She was a landscape architect, a woman with calm eyes and a quiet, steady strength. With her, there was no drama. There was only peace and a deep, abiding respect. We reached the summit as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and violet. The world fell away below us, vast and breathtaking. It was just us, the wind, and the soaring hawks.
It's incredible.
Sarah whispered, her face lit with awe. I looked at her, at the way the setting sun caught the gold in her hair, at the simple, profound joy in her expression. My heart felt too big for my chest, but this time, it wasn't pain. It was a quiet, soaring certainty. It is, I agreed. I squeezed her hand, then let go. But there's one more thing. I reached into the pocket of my hiking pants. This time, there was no lead weight, no secret that warped the air. There was only a simple, sure purpose. I got down on one knee on the sun-warmed rock. Sarah turned, her eyes widening. But unlike a year ago, there was no confusion, no hesitation. Her hands flew to her mouth, and her eyes filled with tears of pure, uncomplicated joy. I opened the box. The ring was different. A unique raw diamond set in a simple band. It was her. It was us. Sarah, I said, my voice clear and strong, carrying on the mountain air. You are my peace. You are my adventure. Will you marry me? Her answer was a radiant, breathless yes. 1,000 times yes. I slid the ring onto her finger. A perfect fit. She pulled me up and kissed me. And as I held her, the past wasn't just behind me. It was gone. Vaporized in the face of this. There was no audience, no performance, no drama. Just a quiet, certain beginning, built on the solid, unshakable ground of mutual respect and love. The ashes of the old ending were so far behind me, I couldn't even see the smoke anymore. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.